Now, the Buckeye Extra Podcast with Joey Kaufman and Rob Oller from the Columbus Dispatch.
Well, it's game week, everyone. The game, Ohio State, Michigan on Saturday. I'm Joey Kaufman, joined by Rob Oller. Ohio State did also beat Rutgers 42-9 last Saturday. But as soon as that game ends, the penultimate game of the regular season, attention always shifts to Michigan. They were chanting, we don't give a you-know-what about the whole state of Michigan in the South Stands as the clock was winding down following the win over the Scarlet Knights. So, Rob, that week is here. Ohio State trying to snap a 4-game losing streak to Michigan. 11-0 in the game. Also needs this one to make the Big Ten championship game. Julian Sand probably needs the win to keep his Heisman Trophy candidacy viable. A lot could happen this week.
A lot could happen in Michigan. They're calling it the drive for five, 5 straight, which I think you've said, they haven't lost 5 in a row since the 20s.
1927 was the last time they had lost 5 games in a row to Michigan.
Yeah. And I think that's on the table. A loss is on the table. I'm trying to decide still. I have a couple more hours here. It's Monday, November 24th. We have to have our picks in pretty early, Thanksgiving week. I'm leaning toward the Wolverines. I mean, I've picked Ohio State the last 4. How's that worked out? Buckeyes lost all 4. So, prove it. I'm kind of going to prove it to me. Ohio State, yeah, they're better on paper, more talent, blah, blah, blah. Heard it all before. Got to prove it. Got to prove that Michigan's not in Ryan Day's head. Have to prove that under the pressure of the moment, Ohio State can perform like they have all season and how they did in the playoff last year, that they cut loose, they don't play conservatively. And I did a tongue-in-cheek column that the worst thing that could happen is Ohio State's run game has improved the last couple of weeks, because that's going to give Ryan Day confidence that, hey, we can run the ball against Michigan. Oh, no. Buckeye Nation is screaming. So, that's kind of, I guess, there's some talking points going into this game. Coming out of Rutgers, no Jeremiah Smith, no Carnell Tate against Rutgers. Will they play against Michigan? I don't expect. You're more boots on the ground than me. I don't expect an acknowledgement and a revelation this week that they will or won't. It'll be they're working hard to get back on the field.
I expect we will find out their definitive status Saturday morning in the hours before kickoff.
What, 10 a.m., something like that?
10 a.m. is when we'll know whether they are listed as questionable or out or not listed on the availability board, which would mean they are likely going to play. I mean, that's the dominant storyline this week, I think, for Ohio State in terms of the on-field storyline, because Ohio State is a better team than Michigan on paper. Michigan is still a team that's only lost twice this year, ranked 5th.
And look how they lost. They lost at Oregon. They lost at Oklahoma. That's not a bad loss. They lost at SC. And I don't believe they've won on the West Coast. Somebody said since some ridiculous 89 or 99. It's like they're 0-7 on the West Coast regular season. So they don't do well going west. Yeah, but they also haven't played anybody, which you could argue Ohio State. You're probably going to get into that a little bit. Ohio State's schedule is very weak in terms of they have not played a team with a winning record since Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, it was strong in the first half of the season because the first 5 FBS teams they played all had winning records or have winning records. Texas.
Yeah. Right. I'm saying as of late.
But as of late, yeah, it's been a while since Ohio State's been played as faced a team in their same weight class, if they have it all this year.
Yeah. So Michigan is, it reminds me of a little bit. Well, I mean, obviously Michigan was unranked last year and pulled the shocker. Maybe 21, a little more like 21, where Michigan's not terrible. What are they ranked now? Like 18th, something like that?
15th in the coaches poll or the AP poll.
Okay, 15th. Yeah. So game's up there. How much does that matter? You would think it would matter some, but Ohio State lost at home last year. There's just a lot of storylines to your point. The big one is Tate and Smith, whether they play, and if they play, how healthy will they be?
Yeah, because I think to me, Ohio State is better on paper, but if they don't have Smith or Tate, or they don't have them at full strength, that takes away a big advantage for Ohio State. We saw sort of a preview of life without Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate last week against Rutgers, and the passing game was pretty limited, and especially at wide receiver, the two leading wide receivers were David Adolph and Brandon Innes, who had 2 catches apiece, so 4 catches for the wide receivers on 7 targets combined for 33 yards. Brandon Innes did have a nice touchdown catch in that corner of the end zone to hold on to the ball. But you did not really see a lot of those guys streaking downfield wide open, getting separation. And that's a concern to me, where I think you just assumed at Ohio State they recruit so many 5 stars and 4 stars. That receiver, Brian Hartline, develops that position group so well that there's always a next guy in line. And it didn't look like that Saturday. And maybe they're sandbagging. It's the week before Michigan. Maybe you don't want to show stuff, but still, you would think you would have maybe targeted some of those guys a little more. Mylan Graham didn't really play until the second half after Brandon Innes got hurt. So to me, that was, I think, not a super encouraging development for the receiver depth. I mean, you knew there was going to be some drop off without Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate available, but did you think it was 4 catches for 33 yards? I thought it might be a little better than that.
Yeah, I tell you what, look at hearing you say all that. Ohio State's roster is just prime for a transfer portal move in, who is like a top receiver nationally on a so-so team with a quarterback issue. So I wouldn't shock me. Now that has nothing to do with this game, but I just after hearing your little diatribe slash soliloquy slash explanation, whatever you want to call it, I could see somebody coming into Ohio State from the outside from another team. But that said, yeah, I think that there's a concern. And really, as good as Carnell Tate is, and Carnell Tate, he might just be a first-round draft pick. I think Jeremiah Smith is a guy you really have to game plan for a little more. And if he's not there, if he's not full go, that changes the dynamic. Now, Michigan's defense is, especially along the defensive line, is not what it was a year ago. And their defensive backs a little shaky. Their offense, their run game's pretty good, although they're down to their third guy. I mean, Jordan Marshall and Justin Haynes, who was the transfer from Alabama, he's out for the season, they're saying. The next guy up, Jordan Marshall, I think he played at Moeller. He hurt his shoulder and didn't play in the last game, but I think they're saying he'll be back, but who knows? So they're down to this Bryson Kuzel, who did have 100 yards against Maryland, but he was a walk-on. I mean, he's not Haynes and he's not Marshall. So they're banged up too. But they do have Bryce Underwood, which, I've talked, it's going to be curious. Bryce Underwood, he's not like a super running quarterback, but he can run. And they haven't really had to face that since Washington, maybe?
Yeah.
So there's some intrigue. There's a lot of intrigue. And I'll just throw this out too. I just learned this, that, you always think, you're Ohio State, you get, basically you have the blinders on, you're paying attention to your own team, your own situation. Oh no, we have these injury updates and all this question marks. Well, Michigan does too. Apparently, this Ernest Hausman, who's like a linebacker, one of their better players, there's been a lot of intrigue on social media that he is done playing. No one seems to know. He is either left the team or they're not sure, get this, to enter the priesthood. So does that mean the Wolverines have God on their side? I am not going to go that far, but they have their own weird things happening up there.
Yeah, I mean, but at this point in the season, nobody's at full strength. That's the old cliche. I think for where it gets interesting for Ohio State in terms of their health is the conventional wisdom going to this year's rivalry game against Michigan was they didn't lean on their wide receiver playmakers in last year's game. They seemed to put all their eggs in the running the ball between the hash marks basket, and well, that didn't work out for them. So in this year's game, they need to figure out a way to get the ball in the perimeter to Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. And their health status makes you wonder how much can Ohio State actually lean on them in the game. And rather than being in a situation where, okay, finally you can lean on your bread and butter, are they going to have to figure out a way to run the ball? And so does it end up being like last year where Ohio State is trying to smash Michigan at the line of scrimmage, or can you still be more creative in the pass game and in the run game and figure out a way to get some guys out in space? Because they do have some playmakers. Bo Jackson's a guy where you get him in space. He's got good vision. He's got some good breakaway ability. And then you have guys like Max Clare, I think, who was able to do some stuff after the catch and get open as well. They do have playmakers. And even if Smith and Tate are not at full strength, you still would think they could help you in some fashion.
Yeah, and Brandon Innes isn't terrible. I mean, he's not those two guys, but he's more than serviceable. The thing is, Michigan can play different defensively if the two big dogs aren't in there. It's going to be an interesting game. There's so much intrigue about this game beyond just the hype and taping over the M's and that team up north and Ohio. It's a great game. The weather could also factor in. What do you got, what meteorologist? I think we're looking at mid-30s, mid to upper 30s with a chance of snow.
Yeah, but that chance of snow is gone, but it could come back. I mean, I think
Yeah, it's Michigan.
it's probably a waste of time at this point in the week to talk about the weather. It'll change four times before now
Yeah.
Saturday. But the snow factor does bring some I think memories for Ohio State of 2021 and Michigan having that snowfall and just being able to run the ball against them at the line of scrimmage. This is as you said, Rob, it's a lot of storylines, a lot of stuff to talk about with this matchup. It's a weird game to actually analyze in some fashion because the psychological component of it matters so much.
Yeah.
And I was not fully on board with that idea until last year's game because that was a totally inexplicable loss. If you go to 21, 22, 23, Michigan had great teams. They won the national championship in 23. They were 11-0 when they played Ohio State at times.
They had counter stallions.
Hey, he's a big part of the operation as well. But the quality of those teams were such where it made sense Michigan won because they have good teams in Ann Arbor. This was not just some crummy Michigan team beating Ohio State, but last year did make you wonder just what kind of mental block Michigan is and just the psychological wounds of the past coming back to bite Ohio State. So it's hard to not think about that when we analyze this game because you look at Ohio State all season, they have shown virtually no flaws. They've been the most dominant team in the country. It's hard to really pinpoint a weakness here and there. Maybe a punt goes 40 yards instead of 50 yards. Oh boy, they lose 10 yards of field position. There's just not a lot of very definite weaknesses in Ohio State, but every time they play Michigan, it feels like they're in their heads. And so you still wonder how much that matters, even though Ohio State might have seemingly every advantage on paper. As we've seen last year, the games aren't played on paper.
Yeah, if you really want to go deep into history and find a game that has a similar odor, look at 1969. Ohio State, they say one of the greatest teams ever. Super Softs, the year after the Super Softs, undefeated. All they had to do was they went up to Michigan. All they had to do was win that game. I think Michigan was ranked 12th. People seem to forget that Michigan was a decent Michigan team that was improving. And, the shocking win in Ann Arbor for the Wolverines, knocked Ohio State out of the national title picture. I'm sure there are other games that have similar vibes, but you're going up there. Michigan's confident. They're still, the guy I just talked to is going to be on another podcast, Matt Stout, who is a former Michigan wrestler, does the PA announcing for the press box for Michigan, is the Upper Arlington wrestling coach. Says, I still fear Ohio State, but we have confidence based on what's happened the last 4 years that, we're not going to just, mail it in and just hand the win to Ohio State. So yeah, you're spot on, man. The psychological side, even to this thing, to this point, Ryan Day, by keeping things the same, he's changing things up.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh no, we're gonna treat things exactly the same. Well, they haven't done that in the past. It's been the band. The bands come in the week of Michigan. They had senior tackle. They've moved that around. This is just like any other game, even though it's not. We're just gonna do the same thing. Well, I'm not saying that smacks of desperation, but it smacks of something. What I find interesting in this whole deal is they do have a certain Ohio State confidence based on the playoff run last year. They're put so much stock in their pacing this season and load management of some players and just how they go about it, assuming that they're going to make a deep run into January. How does that play out for this specific game? Like you're actually planning for a long season into January, but you've got this game right now. How does that factor into all the stuff they've been doing in terms of resting guys? And uh it's a little bit like could be a bump in the road. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing that Brandon Innes mentioned, I think a couple weeks ago, was that Ryan Day has had a different look in his eye since last year's loss to Michigan, and you saw it in the playoff where they just had a laser focus, and they just felt like a team that is just mowing through the opposition week in and week out this year. So they really have felt like they have just been in the zone for almost a year now, and I mean that's 11 games this year, 15 games worth of just being laser focused, and maybe that gives them a little bit of momentum going into this year's game, even though they have lost 4 in a row in this series and doesn't feel like they have momentum in this specific game. I think that's probably worth considering. One thing I do think about the psychological edge, it would probably help them to get off to a good start in this one. I was looking over some the past games. They had an early 3-0 lead last year, then immediately became tied, and they never really had a lead after that. And then in 23, they never led at Michigan. So they have not carried a lead in a halftime of this game since 22. And what sort of boost of confidence it would give Ohio State to get out to an early lead, because you would avoid that feeling of, oh no, here we go again. And I think playing on the road probably helps mitigate some of that anyway. You don't have the collective angst in the horseshoe just bubbling to the surface in the same way. You're playing on the road, but I still think on as far as your sideline, it would be good for them to kind of feel themselves early in this one.
I agree. You do not want to be clutching in a close game coming out of the locker room at halftime, especially going into the fourth quarter. I think if it's close in the fourth quarter, you have to say Michigan's favored at that point.
Mm.
And they have a quarterback who's a freshman, true freshman, but he's grown. Underwood, I remember the first time I saw him, I thought this guy's going to be a load come late November. He's had his ups and downs, but he's capable. I mean, I think he's coming off a 215-yard passing game against Maryland. Now it's Maryland, but that's not bad with 2 touchdowns. So he's only 18 years old, and he turned 18 in August. On the other hand, you got Julian Sand. I'm very interested to see how Julian Sand plays because He really hasn't been under this kind of microscope. Texas was, the opener. He played well. He's played exceptionally well all season. I think better than anyone could have expected. But this is a big game. This is, and is he unflappable? Does he go in there? A lot depends if he has his two guys. I think that's confidence level for him. He hasn't looked quite as crisp without them, of course. But that can get in your head too. All that said, I'd love to know your percentage. I absolutely think that both receivers will play. I think Tate, and this is just, I have no inside information. I think Tate and Smith will both play. How much they play, I think they'll play as long as they don't aggravate injuries. In other words, I don't think this is a load management. We're going to play them half the game against Michigan. I think it's play them as we need them. If Ohio State's up 24 points in the fourth quarter, you take them out of the game probably at that point. But I think they'll play. Something smells funny. What we've been told for weeks here is that, originally with Tate, it was almost precautionary. He could have, I don't even know what game it was. Was it after Penn State?
Purdue, November 8th.
Yeah, Purdue. He could have played if we needed him. Okay, what does that mean? Well, then he didn't play the next two games. Smith looked great against UCLA. No signs of any kind of injury until after 22 snaps he comes out, and then post game he's hobbled. So did he aggravate something? We just don't know. And Ryan Day has been very mum on this. Most paranoid people in the world are football coaches. So they're loath to give away any kind of, top secret government,
Yeah.
giveaway.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a lot of clarity. That's for sure. But it feels like they will play. I mean,
Yeah.
just it's a gut feeling more than anything, but feels like it. I will say the lack of information has certainly made you analyze their gaits on the sideline. Are they walking with a limp, or is that just how they normally walk? Do they kind of walk side to side? Are they just not walking with much strut, or are they walking with strut? I mean, I think that's such a perilous situation to really be analyzing. I mean, I think probably biggest point is they're not in a cast, or they're not in a boot, and they're not in a scooter. They're not in any sort of assisted walking device, which suggests that I think could return this week. And it's the stakes of this game are such where I think they will.
I'll take it one step further. Because they don't give information, that leaves it open to all kinds of speculation.
Sure,
I mean, going back to the Jackson Smith and Jigba season where he was injured in the opener and then tried to come back too soon and tried to come back and then shut it down. Was he injured? Yes. How much? We don't know. Well, in this case, now with NIL, with the one I wouldn't call it a conspiracy theory out there, is Cornell Tate even hurt? He moved up the draft board so fast and was going to be a first round pick that, hey, what else does he have to prove? Maybe he has a sore toenail. Well, that's enough to sit out and, go in. He's still a first round pick. Now you could argue, well, the NFL wouldn't like a guy just sitting out. That might hurt his draft stock if they knew he quit on his team. Again, I'm not saying this is the case, but when you don't know information, that opens everything up to speculation. Now, does Ryan Day and the coaching staff care? No. Why? Because they sit in these windowless meeting rooms in their own reality, and they shut out the noise, they shut out the distraction. They don't care what Buckeye Nation is saying and the fans are saying.
They are windowless, by the way.
They are windowless.
It's like going to the Vegas casinos. You never know what time it is, so I guess you could be game planning at all hours
exactly
of the night.
I was curious. I thought it would be a great question of Ryan Day is whether he knows who the New York mayor is now, the newly elected New York mayor. I would be curious. Well, maybe half our listeners don't know either, but they just don't. Let's put it this way. I highly doubt that Ryan Day and anyone on the staff has gone to see Wicked, the second Wicked movie. I'd be shocked. I'm not even sure they would know what Wicked is.
No, some of those guys have daughters, so
That Wicked to them is Michigan.
at Wicked,
You
at
say
Wicked,
Wicked, it's like, oh, you're talking about that team up north, Wicked, Michigan. That's how they think.
it's a wicked smart point you make there.
Yeah, thank you. Anyhow, it's a great game. I've been doing this a long time, but somehow when you see the wing helmet, when you see the sun, if there is sun breaking through, shining off the silver Ohio State helmets, there's a different vibe here. There's an electricity in the air. The game goes so fast. It's like before you know it, it's halftime. You can't believe how, at least my memory is, this was kind of before they started to throw the ball more often, although they complete them so much that it's like the ball's not hitting the turf, so it's not stopping the clock. The first quarter is like you barely sat down and the first quarter is over. So it's a great game. You covered a lot of UCLA, USC, I think probably. I don't know if that's, I'm not going to say it's comparable, but okay, it's not comparable at all. But there are some great rivalries out there, right? Iron Bowl, Red River Shootout. There's great rivalries. None are better than this one. I'll say that.
The fear of losing in this one, I think, is especially unique to me because that is almost as dreaded as winning the game. Everybody gets a bounce from winning a rivalry game, but just
Right.
the idea of living with a loss for 360 days, I think, is just, you could feel it, and you could feel the relief when I remember after Ryan Day's first win in that press conference room at Michigan Stadium, he just felt like he had some weight off his shoulders to notch that first win. And we'll be back there with him this Saturday. We'll see what
Yeah. I find
strain there is.
it's interesting. Like you could argue, Michigan, Michigan State, intrastate, Auburn, Alabama, that they're more heated and there's more hatred, but when it's in the same state rivalry. But I kind of have a different take in that within the state, you're around each other so much during the season, whether you win or, if you're the loser of that game, you got to listen to it all the time. And it's sort of it's almost like a pressure relief valve that you can you just talk it to death. And, it sort of dissipates a little bit. Michigan's like up there. And yeah, you have Michigan fans in Ohio, but it's almost like you're stuck with your grief and your angst and your pain among each other, your own people for a year, and you don't really allow that pressure to release. And so it just builds up until then you're playing up against Michigan, or the evil invaders are coming down here. I just think that somehow in this rivalry, because it's not within the same state, like Auburn, Alabama, UCLA, USC, that makes it different, makes it special, in some ways makes it even more intense.
Well, I think the emotion of this rivalry is as high as it's ever been as well. I mean, that's the other thing too. We've talked about this on this podcast before, where the Michigan game, as far as being a threshold to reach the playoff or win a national championship, is gone. I mean, the actual practical stakes of this game are as lowered as they've ever been. Ohio State won a national championship last year without having to be Michigan. And that changed, I think, just the nature of this rivalry. But in terms of tensions, in terms of animosity and those sort of things that make a rivalry, and that way, just the hatred, it's high right now. I mean, you had the biggest cheating scandal in arguably in college football in a generation going on for several years, and Ohio State believes that it cost them some wins in the rivalry. You had last year where Michigan tried to plant a flag at midfield, and it was an ensuing melee that followed. To me, and then you have the Ohio State fans being as hard on Ryan Day as possible or he needed private security at his home following the loss to Michigan last year until they won a national championship. So the way people feel about this game is as strong as it's ever been. But I mean, Ohio State could lose on Saturday and go on to win back-to-back national championship. So it's there are these conflicting ideas that exist within the rivalry at this time. It's made for good fodder for us.
It has. As I've been saying it, objectively, this rivalry does not matter as much as it used to, and based on playoff implications and national championship implications, as proven last year, as you said. They lose to Michigan, they win the title. Subjectively, it's bigger than ever, partly because of social media, the vitriol there, because of just everything's bigger. TV networks, the hype is bigger, because of the Connor Stallions situation, Jim Harbaugh. I mean, it's huge. And I just learned this. I guess I didn't think this was possible, but it is possible. If Ohio State would happen to lose, and if Indiana wins and Oregon loses at Washington, which is that's not an easy.
If Indiana loses,
If no, I'm saying for Michigan, for Michigan to make the playoff, think if I think if Oregon loses, Indiana wins, and Michigan beats Ohio State, Michigan would play in the Big Ten championship game. I think.
if Indiana wins and Oregon loses, yes,
Yes. So, and if Michigan will then win the Big Ten championship game, or even if they don't, they could make the playoff, and Ohio State and Michigan could play in the playoff. They could face each other.
They could play in the Big Ten championship game if Indiana were to lose to Purdue and Oregon were to lose, but that's not out of the realm of possibility either, although out of the realm of likelihood.
Wow. Yeah. So the fact that this isn't just a one and done, like it was way back when the Michigan game was really your only chance. Joey, not till 1975 was there even a chance to go to another bowl. There was only the Rose Bowl, and that almost always came down to Ohio State, Michigan. So much was on the line, and if you didn't play in the Rose Bowl, you weren't winning a national title. So, and now it's like, name your bowl. So it's just a lot less on the line. Now youngins don't remember those days, so all they know is what's now, and it's beat Michigan. And I think also, if you look at the surveys and the polling for younger people, younger being maybe 35 or 30 and under, I think the national championship. I asked people at the game, these Ohio State students at the Rutgers game. I said, "Would you rather have win a natty, or beat Michigan?" And three of them all said, "Win the natty." There's been so much emphasis now on winning the national title. It wasn't always the case. It was always the goal, but you didn't obsess over it like you do now. So in that way, I would say 65+% of fans would rather win a national championship than beat Michigan, if you had to pick one.
Although what's interesting is this year, because they did win a national championship so recently,
yeah,
Michigan almost would feel more novel to have a win over Michigan.
I would think so, but you talk to people that's still the national championship. I don't quite get that. I'm with you. To me, this is like, you got to check that box. You got to beat Michigan at some point.
Although here's the thing, you lie to yourself if you're like, because they won the national championship last year and they lost to Michigan. So therefore, the story you tell yourself is the national championship matters more than Michigan. If this year they beat Michigan and there's such a collective just release and they slip in a quarterfinal or a semifinal, then you tell yourself another story. So it's
you tell yourself you say we need to lose to Michigan this year so we can win the national title, which I would argue was the case last year. This is the unsolvable riddle debate. Is that
But if you're beating Michigan and not winning national titles, then you tell yourself the rivalry matters more than it ever does. And if you're winning national titles and not beating Michigan, then you say, hey, we play for the ultimate prize in college football. So it just matters ultimately.
Emotional self-protection is what you're saying.
Which is fine.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
But I think this team wants to do the whole thing.
My gosh,
That's
it's gonna be wild.
That's the one they didn't do last.
And all I would say is if you've never been up to a Michigan game, you need to get there. If you're an Ohio State fan, you need to go to the big house once and see what it's like. You need to see the Ohio State fans flipping the bird at the big Michigan scoreboard sign with the blue background and the maze M,
Marcus
the black block M. Well, the Marcus Hall. Yeah, you just need to be in that environment, and it's an impressive building. It's just, down, it's like the Rose Bowl a little bit. It's down in the ground. It's very wide. I think they can put 111 thou in there. It's not as loud.
Quietest 110,000 people gathering in the world.
Yeah, it could be. Well, Ohio State hopes that this Saturday. They hope that it's a quiet crowd. I hope they can quiet the crowd.
We'll see if the Buckeyes can do that. Saturday noon is the game. Hope everybody before that eats plenty of Thanksgiving turkey and rests up. Thanks for listening.